your eyes on me. It's like I'm caught inside your endless sea, falling fast into the deep. Surrender, won't be sound asleep. Yeah. I've never known a life like this, a stranger's kiss, the sweet attraction. I've never known a love like this, forbidden bliss, consumed in action. I've never known a life like this, a stranger's kiss, the sweet attraction. I've never known a love like this, forbidden bliss. I'm yours, take me home. Take me home. Take me home. Hold me in your heaven, I won't forget the thrill of it all. Take me home. Breathless, rising to the beat. Infectious, comes so naturally. It's like I'm lost inside your ecstasy, wondering if we could be in heaven. We make our reality. I've never known a life like this, a stranger's kiss, the sweet attraction. I've never known a love like this, forbidden bliss, consumed in action. I've never known a life like this, a stranger's kiss, the sweet attraction. I've never known a love like this, forbidden bliss. I'm yours, take me home. Take me home. Take me home. Hold me in your heaven, I won't forget the thrill of it all. Take me home. Take me home. Reckless, more than I've been free. Defenseless, with your eyes on me. It's like I'm caught inside your endless sea, falling fast into the deep. Surrender, won't be sound asleep. Yeah. I've never known a life like this, a stranger's kiss, the sweet attraction. I've never known a love like this, forbidden bliss, consumed in action. I've never known a life like this, a stranger's kiss, the sweet attraction. I've never known a love like this, forbidden bliss. I'm yours, take me home.
Check. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's dolltr. Nice to see all of you. I also go by Claire when I'm teaching with 343 Labs. Really great to be here. We are at another episode of what's this show called? Tips and Tricks. No, I kid. Very excited to be back here, and thank you for watching the 343 Labs YouTube channel. As you can see, I've got a little bit of a improved setup today, hopefully. But hi, thank you for all tuning in. Hope you're all staying safe and staying well and doing okay. I'm excited for today, but if you are watching on the 343 Labs YouTube channel, feel free to give us a little shout out where you're watching from. For example, me, I'm in Queens. in New York at the moment, where it is actually pretty cold today. And that's maybe why I have a little bit of more background noise than usual. I've had to turn on my heater, which is because it's really cold in my apartment. But it's a really lovely day. It is quite bright outside, so maybe after this I'll go out and take a walk. But I hope everyone's doing good. Thank you also, as usual, to Thomas for running everything behind the scenes, behind the 343 Labs name on 343 Labs YouTube channel. If you also want to enter our giveaway, maybe Thomas might be able to share a little bit of information too. So everyone, we always appreciate... Ooh, my stream is starting to... It's like a weird kind of... Ooh, no, we're all good. We're okay. But yeah, the thing we're going to do moving forward is we're going to have giveaways that are weekly giveaways. So if you want to enter, I believe there's a link that you can put in, you can sign up and enter yourself into the giveaway for. And at the end of the week, we will be announcing the winner of a $200 voucher from Ableton, the company. Ableton is the company that makes the software live. If you've watched my streams before, you'll know my entire spiel on that. So I won't go too in-depth into it like today. But also, hi to Mick from England. Hope all is well over there. Maybe everything's starting to get a little bit colder. I know we're kind of in that period between summer to fall, so kind of moving over in that direction. But yeah, we're really happy to have you at 343 Labs with us. Thank you also to everyone who's been subscribing to us over the last couple of weeks. We had a bunch of people subscribe to the channel. It's been really wonderful to grow our community. So thank you always for your support. But over here today, let's just maybe start and just dive into things. So if you tuned into my stream last week, and maybe I'll take a step back and reintroduce stuff. But I'm one of the instructors at 343 Labs. We're a school that's based in New York, but we also have a location in Berlin now, and our co-founder Max is over there running the scene over there for us. But now we're also doing a lot of online programming, and 343 TV, which is what you're seeing now, is our daily programming that we share with you on YouTube, but also other platforms that we broadcast to, and we share a little bit of something that we want to show from the instructors. And for me, I'm Claire, and I'm an Ableton Certified Trainer, and I host the Monday show, which is what you're watching now. It's Tips and Tricks with dolltr, which is my artist name that I do other stuff under. But yeah, last week, if you tuned in last week, you might remember that we focused on creating custom drum racks and how to put in different kinds of sounds, how to swap sounds out, how to start programming them into. So this week I wanted to take a little bit of a revisit to the idea of racks, but instead of doing drum racks, we're going to do instrument racks in live. So, and this is maybe kind of like a series in a way, because next week maybe we'll talk even more about different kinds of racks too. But for today, we are going to do some work with instrument racks. So over here, I've got live pulled up. This is session view in Ableton Live. And I like to start building a couple of racks. So let me go ahead and maybe play this first. We have this, we have this clip over here in my MIDI track with a drum rack on it, I believe, that we used last week. Yes, this was our 606 Excalibur kit from last week. So let's go ahead and play this. I'm going to press the play button, which is the sideways triangle in live on this particular clip, and let's go for it. Nice. Cool. So going to press spacebar to pause that. Now, if you remember, we talked last week about how we could, make things a little bit different within the rack, how we could even open up the chains and see individual parts of the rack itself. So today, let's go ahead and do some instrument stuff, but maybe while we are just all kind of settling in as well. Oh, we had a question from Todd. Hello, Todd. You can follow the instructions, which were actually in the comment right above that question that you put in the chat. So if you just read the instructions, you'll be able to enter yourself for the $200 voucher. Hope you enter, and I hope you win too. Last week we were able to give away a $300 voucher to one of the folks who tuned in for the stream. So yay, excited for that. But in the meantime, let's get back over here. So I've got my drum rack. Let's do an instrument rack. But before we even start, I would love to have a suggestion from the chat on YouTube, especially if you would like to maybe propose a key for us to work in. So usually when we think about music, we make it in a certain key or in a certain with a certain arrangement of notes. Maybe if you tuned into Theory Thursdays with Max, you might know a little bit too. But if we can get a suggestion for a key from the YouTube folks, I see a couple of people just joined in too. So welcome everyone if you're just tuning in. We would like a suggestion for a key, please, if you have a suggestion for a key. And while I'm waiting for that, maybe I'll just take a look at some of the categories over here in Live in the browser. Maybe let's start off with like some kind of synth keys patch, but if we can get a key suggestion from the YouTube chat, that would be awesome. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and maybe pick some kind of synth keys patch. Ooh, cool. So that was interesting. My preview volume was also very loud, so I'm going to head over into the right-hand side of Live. Maybe this is also a tip. If you want to make the volume of previews or your metronome or click softer, you can click on this little headphone icon and bring down the knob, and much better. That's actually pretty neat. Okay, cool. We have Skia Marcos. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and I do apologize if I'm not. D minor, thank you for that suggestion. Let's go with D minor, and maybe let's pull up the sound that I already had over here, this Colossus guitar. I'm gonna go and click and drag and drop that preset into the empty space over here that says drop files and devices here. And you know what? I'm also going to turn on push for this. So if you've followed my other streams before or you've watched my other broadcasts, either on my own YouTube channel or on 343 TV's YouTube channel, you might know that my affectionate title is Push Lady, just because I love using Ableton Push a lot in my work. And it's not going to be super crucial today, but I would like to maybe use it for a little bit of our initial programming with the Ableton Live stuff that we're going to do. So I just turned push on. It may take a second to register, but great, we have D minor as a suggestion for a key. Cool. Here, let's go ahead on push. We're going to set the key to D minor, and this way, I'm going to be able to play push with D minor, but I'm also going to decrease the overall volume of this from push as well. There we go. There's our D minor. And the cool thing about push, and maybe this will be a part of the future tips and tricks episodes too, but the great part about push is you can play lots of different kinds of chord shapes really easily, especially once you start to get to know the overall interface of push and how it works. So let's go with let's turn on the metronome as well for push. And maybe let's create some kind of chord progression in D minor to go with. Cool. Let's go for it. And here we go. In session view. Let's go ahead and decrease the volume of that and turn the metronome off. And I also did some weird stuff over there because I wasn't doing this properly. But let's go ahead and maybe, let's copy that, put that here, paste that. Select all the notes also, and we can make them legato. We can also maybe quantize them a little bit. Cool. So there is our first instrument that we've done. We can stop that from push too. So great, I've got some kind of clip loaded up over here. We can see that it is over here on this track. Now, I'm thinking it might be nice to add on some other layers to this, right? Which is kind of where the concept of instrument racks comes in super handy. So we put in some kind of guitar sound, which is really neat. And maybe I'll go ahead and also rename this track guitar. So that we have a reference, maybe, or let's call it chords, because then we'll have a little bit more leeway to play with the actual sounds. But we've got this. And, someone's watching from gym class. Hi, Ari. Welcome from gym class. Hope you are enjoying this. But in the meantime, we've got some kind of fake guitar keys part going on. Any suggestions for other kinds of parts that we should have? If you have something you'd like to suggest, please go ahead and type it into the chat. Maybe some examples of parts could be like piano, or maybe some kind of pad. And I'd love to hear suggestions from folks so that we can, build some instrument racks together. Ooh, hello to Nefertiti. Nice to see you again. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, let's keep going with this. So instrument racks. We've got some guitar stuff. Maybe I'll make the first suggestion. Let's go for it. So over here in Live, if you ever want to switch between looking at a MIDI clip and the MIDI notes in it and the actual instrument, goodness, my words, that is happening, you can use Shift Tab to switch between those two things. So for example, if I press Shift Tab, I can now see the MIDI notes that I just played in. If I do Shift Tab again, I get a view of this particular instrument, the Colossus guitar. Now, if I want to layer this on with something, maybe I want to add on like a secondary sort of instrument to this, especially because for me, maybe this is a bit of background about me too. But when I first started getting into live performance, a lot of the performance stuff that I was doing was heavily reliant on building stacks of sounds, mainly because I think, now that I reflect on it a bit, I'm a piano player and I'm a classically trained pianist, and I also play the flute. But when I started doing more electronic stuff, I would do a lot of things on keys. So I loved having stacks of sounds. If there are any like Reason users out there, I don't know if anyone uses Reason as a DAW, but I still use Reason too. And there's something inside it called Combinator that I'm a big fan of, but it lets you like do these wonderful lush kinds of keyboard stacks, a little similar to the main stage workflow as well. But yes, I just started like stacking things for days and days and days, and instrument racks became my really good friend. One great way that you can start creating an instrument rack is to invoke the keyboard shortcut Command G or Control G, which is going to put your instrument that you've selected into a group. But really what it does is put it in an instrument rack. And you can see right after I did that command, right now over here in Live, we have some kind of container that's around the instrument rack. And if you click on a couple of these little icons to the left of the name of the main device that I have over here, you're going to pop open some other parts of the instrument rack interface. For example, you'll have the set of 8 macros exposed, and you will also have the chain list show up. And this really is a power of the instrument rack. And as we dive into things, that's going to help us a lot. So yeah, welcome to everyone who just joined in. Thank you, Thomas, for the reminder about joining the giveaway. If you're tuning in with us on YouTube, you should be able to join the giveaway. So please enter, and we hope that you win the $200 Ableton voucher. But in the meantime, we've got some chords over here. I didn't get suggestions for, looks like I don't have suggestions for any other kinds of instruments yet. So maybe I'll go ahead and do the first one. Maybe I want some kind of, cool, let me take a listen to this one more time. So head over into session view on push. Okay. Cool. Okay, so just kind of reminding myself of the different kinds of things that are happening in the chord progression that I did. I think it might be cool to maybe add a little bit of a subtle layer on top of this, maybe some kind of pad. So let's go ahead and head over into the pads category underneath sounds, and maybe let's audition a couple of these, or maybe find a pad that sounds nice. Ooh. Let's increase the volume. Oh, that's actually not too bad. I kind of liked it, a little bit of a more pure sort of tone to it. Great. So let's go ahead and let's drag this preset, and instead of just dropping it, onto the actual device itself, usually that's what you would do if you wanted to replace a device in Live, I'm going to drag and drop it over here into the empty space in the instrument rack that is giving me information, and it's already given me instructions. It's saying drop an instrument or sample here. So I will follow those instructions and I will drop an instrument over there. Now, if we were to play back the clip that I have, I'm going to also stop the drums so that we can focus in on the chords. We've got this. Great. So what's happening? I'm actually getting 2 sounds at the moment that are stacked against each other. If I wanted to, I could even go into the instrument rack and hear these one at a time. So this is the pad that I just added. Which I'm gonna edit a little bit as far as its parameters go. And here is the guitar part. guitar part. Cool. Great, so we kind of got this sound that is thicker than it was before. It's also got different octaves. You can kind of hear that the pad sound is actually an octave higher than the guitar sound, so that's pretty neat. Now, whenever I'm doing these stacks with instrument racks, especially if I have one sound that's working on an entire track, I sometimes like to put on MIDI effects to vary things a little bit. So maybe this is a little bit of a trick or a tip. But let's go ahead and head over to the MIDI effects category in Live, and I'm going to head over to the Arpeggiator device. Now, I've got this instrument rack over here, and I think what I would like to do is keep the guitar as it was, but add the Arpeggiator to the pad that I just added on, maybe for a little bit more variation. So I'm going to click and drag the Arpeggiator onto the new pad track. And now you'll notice that if I were to select this part of the instrument rack, this particular chain with the pad, I have the arpeggiator before the pad itself. And that's something to keep in mind. And I like doing this a lot for not just instrument racks, but also other kinds of rack building too that maybe also has audio effects behind the instruments, which we could do later too, is I like to remember that whenever I'm dealing with MIDI effects, they're always going to appear before the actual instrument. And that's because if you think about the processing chain that happens in Live, you have your instrument, but if you want to affect the MIDI information that the instrument is receiving, it's got to come before the instrument itself. And then when you're affecting the way that the instrument sounds, you're dealing with the audio. So the audio effect is going to always be after that. So usually the sequence of effects is MIDI effect, and then instrument itself, and then you'll have your audio effect after. So that's something that I like to keep in mind. But over here, we've added the arpeggiator in, so let's take a listen to what we got now. So I just decreased also the volume of the guitar inside the rack. Let's make this a little brighter on the pad. Maybe put a little bit more resonance into it and readjust some volumes. Cool. And again, all of this is on one track, so it's kind of all self-contained. And I'm also going to keep tweaking the arpeggiator. Maybe we'll have, you know, some other interesting sounds that we can find. Also, welcome to everyone who just joined in. I saw the numbers bump up a little bit. This is the Tips and Tricks show with dolltr or Claire, as I go by whenever I'm teaching, because I keep my artist stuff kind of separate from my teaching stuff. But welcome to the channel, especially if you're watching for the first time. We have some tips and tricks for building instrument racks in Ableton Live today. So over here, we're doing a little bit of tweaking. But as you come in, feel free to introduce yourself if you want to in the YouTube chat, and also suggest an instrument, please. We're going to need lots of suggestions for instruments today since we're working on instrument racks. So go ahead and put those into the chat if you would like to contribute to the discussion. But over here, we've got our rack. Let's keep tweaking this. I'm maybe going to make a couple adjustments to the arpeggiator. And just making some adjustments. Very cool. Cool. I'm also softening the attack on a couple of these things. Great. So we have a stack so far. I'm also going to go ahead and head over within the instrument rack and start renaming these. So this is really where the renaming of individual chains in the instrument rack can be helpful. So we've got our guitar synth. And then we've got this over here. Also, I'm pressing Command R or Control R to rename specific chains. That's a really useful shortcut that I found in Live for being able to keep organized and being able to navigate your live set. I feel like that's the most important thing, especially because whenever I use instrument racks, for me, I often use them in the context of live performance. So it's important for me to be able to navigate different things. And on that note, usually when I think about chords, I think of them as purple. So, and we have kind of like a purplish blue shade over here, but I think I'd like to make it a stronger color purple. So from Push, I'm going to go ahead and recolor this track. I'm going to hold down Shift and do this. Now we've got some kinds of more like pinkish purple, I guess, type of color to it. But yay, that's much more in line with how I usually organize my different kinds of presets and different types of sounds really in live. So, ooh, we had some suggestions. Thank you. Mick, yes, let's do a brass ensemble. Let's go ahead and head over into the categories for sounds again. And maybe this time I'll do a little bit of a search in live instead. So if you are in live and you press Control F on a PC or Command F on a Mac, you're going to be able to do a search. So let's search for some brass. And let's look in instruments. Ooh, maybe we'll get some like, brass buzz ensemble from the operator instrument. So let's go ahead and put it over here as another type of layer. So now let's check out what we have. And we may have to readjust a couple of these volumes too. So here we go. Great. Cool. Now, I kind of like all of the layers that we have. What if we wanted this brass sound? I do like the brass ensemble stuff. I'm wondering if, since it's actually in the same range as the guitar synth, if maybe we can do a little bit of MIDI effect manipulation too. Just as a reminder, this is what the guitar synth sounded like on its own. So pretty nice. But the brass is a little bit, it's kind of in a similar range. It is actually, there is an octave that's above that too, but it's kind of got that similar tone to it. So I'm wondering what would happen if we brought in a different kind of MIDI effect, this time called chord. So chord is actually an effect that I love using to stack out different kinds of MIDI notes, especially in different octaves. One thing that you can do with chord is, maybe I'll just show you right now. So here's our brass ensemble type of thing. Very big, lots of sound. Maybe we can even filter some stuff later. Let's go ahead and drag and drop the chord device onto the brass chain that we have, and you'll see that it pops up over here before the brass ensemble. I'm also going to go ahead and rename that. So let's call it brass so that we can stay organized. And let's take a listen to what's happening first when I put it on. And the answer is nothing. That's because the way the chord device works is you need to tell the device how much you would like the notes to be shifted by. So what the device is going to do is it's going to analyze the notes that are already there in the MIDI clip that you have. So for example, these are the notes. And if you instantiate a shift of, say, 12 semitones, which is an octave, and I want it to be an octave higher, it's not only going to play back these notes, but it's also going to play back the notes that are an octave higher. So you're going to get this really, really big stack. Or in this case, maybe we could even do an octave lower. Let's see how that goes. So in the chord device, I'm going to click on Shift 1 over here, and I'm just going to click and drag down until I have minus 12. Again, why minus 12? That's because usually when we think about an octave in music, there are 12 semitones. So minus 12 ST is going to mean that we're going to be an octave lower, and this is what will sound like now. Cool. And just to illustrate, if we wanted to make this plus 12, that's where it is. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the minus 12. I kind of like that. So now if I unsolo this, we got... Great. So now you might be able to hear that we have a little bit more, low mid range in the brass patch just because we made it an octave lower. which thickens it up, but it also puts in some, lower frequencies that maybe might make this particular sound a little bit muddy. So going back to what I mentioned just now, we've worked with the MIDI effects, we've worked with the instruments. Let's try to EQ this section, just the brass part of this instrument rack, because I like how the other devices sounded. I just want to put an EQ onto this brass patch itself, just the brass chain. And this is a great part about the instrument rack, is if you stack things up, you can choose to have certain audio effects only applied to that chain. So let's go ahead and look for the EQ8 audio effect in Live. EQ8, boo, there it is. Yeah, let's click and drag and drop it over onto the brass patch, and look, it is now appearing behind the brass buzz ensemble instrument itself. What I'm also going to do is, for now, close up these instruments by double clicking on their names to collapse them, because I just want to be able to see the EQ only when I'm messing with the brass sound. So here we go. Cool. Also going to make this overall sound just lower so you can hear me speak over it. The first thing I'm going to do is maybe do a little bit of a high pass filter, and also maybe just a slight dip around 3 kilohertz because it was getting a little bit crunchy over there. And now if I take a listen again, we've still got the lower notes that are being created by chord, but because of this, we've kind of cleaned up a little bit of the low end, so it's not super overwhelming. Ooh, also welcome to folks who just tuned in. Greetings to everybody. TWD, hey, how's it going? Who else do we have? Jonathan, hi again. Nice to see you too. Nicholas, hi. What would you guys say the best piece of advice for marketing is? That's an excellent question, and it's something that I can't really answer because I'm doing the Ableton live stream. So maybe if you had that question, it might be good for perhaps, what would be a good session? Maybe our feedback session would be a good one to attend, or maybe our one of our other sessions by TAETRO is also really great. For that, TAETRO is going to be streaming tomorrow. He is our creative director at 343 Labs. So I would, and maybe this is a general tip if you could get one from me about a tip and trick related to asking questions in the real world, in real life. So not so much Ableton Live, and this is maybe my educator side speaking up. It's always great to do a little bit of research to speak to who can help you the best. For example, if you know that today's session was about making instrument racks, might not be the best opportunity to kind of ask about marketing questions, but a good session would be to find someone else who's able to address that, or find a dedicated time and place to do that. That's often something that I found has saved me a lot of time over the years, and a lot of grief with, figuring out like, oh, why isn't this person replying? Or why aren't these people giving me the answers? But maybe you're not actually asking the right people the right questions. And it's not to be dismissive at all, but maybe just a little bit of a suggestion that I could give for asking the right people the right questions. Back to that though, TWD had a really great question, which maybe I can answer in this case. Can you use the Arpeggiator to create a strum effect? So TWD, I'm going to kind of guess that maybe you mean something similar to the guitar, like if you're creating some kind of strum. I found that the Arpeggiator is really useful for creating continuous types of sounds, but absolutely, let's see if we can maybe create some kind of strum effect with the Arpeggiator a little bit later on when we start thinking about maybe different kinds of instruments when we're done building out this effect. Ooh, also, hello to Lisa. Hey, nice to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us again. Oh, it's funny that I'm kind of saying hi to people now, because usually I do try to say hi like at the middle of the stream, and it seems like we're right here. We're like in the right place. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate you all. If you've just joined in, because I saw the numbers bump up a little bit, please don't forget to enter the giveaway. We have a giveaway for a $200 Ableton voucher from the company Ableton, that if you scroll up in the YouTube chat, Thomas from 343 Labs has put in some really helpful information on how to enter. So please consider entering, and think about whether you'd like to be entered for a $200 gift voucher from the Ableton web shop. Yay! I will probably enter and keep watching, but the winners will be announced at the end of the week. So let's head back over here to our brass patch. I think I was talking about EQing. Yes, great. So we've applied EQ to this. We've worked individually on some of these parts. Now, when you think about an instrument rack, and maybe this also ties in a little bit to TWD's topic, about creating strums. When you think about an instrument rack, the same MIDI is being played by all of the instruments in the rack. So the same MIDI information, which we originally programmed in, or recorded in rather, using push at the beginning of our stream, is going to be the same MIDI information that is played by every single instrument in the rack. So the arpeggiator on the pad is going to be playing that. The chords, the guitar, is also going to be playing that. The brass is also going to be playing that. So if we wanted to create some alternative kind of, information, maybe to create the strumming thing that TWD suggested, we would probably have to create that on a separate track. But maybe let's go ahead and give that a shot. Let's create a new MIDI track. And you know what? To do the strum thing, I'm going to head over to the sounds category. And let's pull up some kind of mallet, actually. One thing that I also think about a lot when I think of the strumming stuff is not so much strumming, but it's fast arpeggiations. And I think mallet could be really useful for that. So let's head over to the mallets category. And you know, I'm going to pull up, let's see. Let's find an interesting sound. Ooh, goodness. Maybe glockenspiel could be nice. I like glockenspiels. They're kind of cool. Oh, that already has some inside. Cool. Glockenspiel basic. Let's go ahead and click and drag and drop this over here. And let's see if we can maybe tweak this a little bit. So I'm going to drag, I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to click and drag the chords onto the glockenspiel track. And now if I solo this glockenspiel track, let's play this clip back. Ooh, loud. I do apologize. Always take care of your ears. Let's go ahead and try and put on the arpeggiator stuff into it. So let's go on into Midi Effects, because the arpeggiator is a Midi effect. Let's click and drag it here. I'm also going to stop this clip. Now, I'm going to make this a little softer, but keep it playing in the background. If we were thinking of some kind of strum sound, the general principle is that strums happen quickly. They don't happen simultaneously, the note playings themselves, because that would be, you would have a chord in that case, but they happen very quickly in succession. So maybe we would get ourselves a little bit closer to a strum if we made the rate of this arpeggiator shorter. So let's go ahead and try this out. Cool. So this actually, let's take a listen to this. I'm also going to make it a little louder so that we can all hear it. Cool. So interestingly enough, whenever I hear sounds like that are very quick, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this before, but there's a Chinese traditional instrument called the pipa that sounds a little bit like this if you play it in a way. It's a plucked instrument that you play with plectrums, but it's also really great for creating different kinds of textures. This reminds me a little bit of the pipa. But if you are doing some kind of strumming, maybe you're also going to strum from low to high. So in that case, let's maybe increase the steps on the arpeggiator. So maybe this is a little closer to strumming. That said though, again, for a lot of strums, usually they tend to, happen once and then they stop. So maybe instead of having all of these notes held out, let's go ahead and decrease them in length. So I'm going to click anywhere inside the MIDI note editor, pressing Control A or Command A, depending on whether I'm on a PC or a Mac. And let's make all of these shorter. Let's make them like this. And there we go. Maybe a little shorter so that we don't catch the end of that. There we go. So TWD, there is the strum. That's something that I like doing a lot also in my music too. If you listen to, I'm gonna pause for a second. If you listen to any of my dolltr tracks, like from my artist stuff, you'll hear strums and plectrums and a lot of these different kinds of compositions. But yeah, that's a way that you would create this. Now, this is kind of the opposite of what we did just now. Just now we started in the direction of, okay, here's an instrument. Let's create an instrument rack so that we can stack up other sounds. But now that I have this sequence, what if I would like to put this into a rack itself? Maybe I want to have this be a unit on its own. And maybe we can also add a couple of things after it, like reverb. That might be a cool thing to also put on this plucked arpeggiated strum kind of sound. So let's head over into the audio effects category, and I'm going to pull up reverb. And I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. And whoops, I accidentally created an audio track. That's all right. Let's undo that with Control Z or Command Z and redo that by putting it over here. Here we go. Nice. Maybe make a longer decay time. Cut out some low ends. Great. More dry wet. Nice. Maybe a bit of less on the lower end of the diffusion. Great. Cool. So we have this going, and I would like to create a rack out of all of these instruments, keep them as one unit. So one way to do this is to select the very first device in your series of devices, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, and then click on the last device that you want to select. So just to take a step back too, anytime I say the word device, it really just refers to any of these blocks that you see in live. A device could be an instrument, it could be some kind of MIDI effect, it could also be an audio effect. So that's really what I mean whenever I say device. And in this case, I've got 3 devices. I've got the arpeggiator, the glockenspiel, and the reverb. So again, clicking on the first one, holding Shift, selecting the last one, and then I can instantiate the Control G or Command G, I was going to say Command something else, Command G, command with that, and boom, I now have an instrument rack. So that's another way that you can do this as well. Now this entire unit is itself the instrument rack. Nice. So I'm wondering what would happen if we head back over into the chords. Let's unsolo the chain, and let's go ahead and play everything back together. We're starting to kind of get something nice. That's cool. So hi to Silvio, who also just joined in from Brazil. Ooh, Todd had a good question. How many different instruments do you normally layer? For me, I find that it really depends on what you're trying to do. So there really isn't a normal kind of situation. But if you wanted to test out the maximum number of instruments, the maximum really is just CPU. It's a matter of how much your computer can handle, I think. And something else that I also do consider quite a lot of, which maybe you also got a hint of as I was starting to manipulate a lot of the racks themselves, is the exact combination of instruments that I have and how their volume is affecting the overall instrument's output. So what I'm going to do temporarily, just to kind of illustrate my point, is reset all of these chain volumes to 0. I can do that by double-clicking on their volume boxes over here. So now they're all going to be at 0. I'm also going to be very conscious of our ears, and I'm going to make everything a little bit softer. Also going to stop the drums and stop the strum that we had. So going to make this softer. And let's take a listen to what we have. Cool. So as a little bit of an experiment, what I'm going to do is make this louder, maybe until we can really hear an audible difference. The first time round, I'm just going to play the guitar synth, and the second time round, I'm going to add in the pad, which is the arpeggiator, and also the brass, and see if you can hear a difference in amplitude, a difference in volume. So I'm going to mute these for now from within the chain list, and here's just the guitar. Let's add stuff. Cool, and making everything softer. Apologies to everyone's ears, especially if you are listening very loudly. I do try to be careful of the ears and the listening levels, just because it's important to take care of your ears. But one thing you might have noticed is that the moment I brought in the other instruments, the volume went up, and that's because I'm adding specific layers on top of each other. So one thing I want to be mindful of when I'm stacking instruments, and this maybe relates to Todd's question, is the overall volume. Like, I don't want to make this instrument like super stacked and then be super overwhelming. I want to be able to control them. So let's go ahead and maybe balance this out again. I'm going to play back the clip and we'll readjust the volumes from within Live. In the chain list. Cool. Now this particular guitar synth, I kind of like it a lot. And I like what happens to it when you move the filter cutoff knob. So like, I like that a lot, and I do think that if we listened to this in the context of the entire instrument, we would also be able to maybe hear some interesting results. So here is the filter cutoff low for the guitar synth. High filter cutoff. And yeah, I like how that sounds. I like that it's bringing in a different kind of timbre that's kind of pretty subtle, but when you listen for it, you know, it does transform the sound. And hello! Hi, Abe! How's it going? Abe hosts another of the 343 TV shows, everyone, so please stay tuned for the rest of the week and tune into Abe's show too. It's the Abe Duque. But yeah, the maximum CPU, I really do think it kind of depends on what your CPU is, and also whether you're happening to stream at the same time, because people have commented about this before on my other streams too, but they always notice that whenever I'm doing stuff in Live, it seems like my CPU is going crazy. For most part, it's really just because I'm running a lot of software on my computer. Usually when I don't have all of that running, so when I'm doing like my normal production work, the CPU is much happier. For example, right now, if I played all of these clips back, let's see what happens to my CPU. Cool. So I'm going to stop all those clips too, but you'll see that immediately jumped up to like 50 or 60%. That's something that I've noticed happens a lot when streaming, so depends on your maximum CPU. However many things you want to stack, Todd, feel free to go ahead and stack all of that, or anyone really. If you want to create like tons and tons of arpeggiator chains, you are totally welcome to do so as well. But let's head back over into our chords track. I was back here talking about the filter cutoff, and one thing I like about instrument racks too is that you can start kind of customizing them as far as the macro controls go. So that's really why I popped open this part of the interface just now to show the macros. That's because if I wanted to have easy access to this filter cutoff again from the guitar instrument, but have it accessible in the main instrument rack, I can right click on it and I can say map to macro 1. Once I've done that, now my guitar filter cutoff is controllable from the main instrument rack, and I can even do that from push over here. So if we played back the clip, you can hear the change. Cool. Now you might notice then, and I purposely kind of did this, the only thing that's being controlled with the filter cutoff knob is the guitar itself, because that was the control on the guitar. What if I wanted to do the same thing for the brass instrument? Let's head over to the brass chain and let's open up the instrument by double clicking on its name because I previously collapsed it. If we solo the brass patch, the filter frequency knob is going to be the knob that is going to control the brightness. So let's just take a listen to this again. And it's actually happening pretty subtly because of the way that this is working in Operator. You can kind of hear different sounds. Let's change the filter envelope to make this a bit more obvious. Like, there's a lot of stuff going there. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to map this filter frequency knob to the filter cutoff too. So now with this macro 1 knob, I'm controlling two things at once in different versions of the chain list. And there's lots of ways that you could customize this and go super in depth. Not going to go entirely in depth, but because I still want to talk about a couple of cool things that you can do with instrument racks. But yeah, so now I'm able to control it with the one knob, and it's going to sound like this. With the guitar synth. Ooh, whoops. Let's shift that back. I changed the Midi effect. And you'll notice that the arpeggiator is still kind of shining on top. Maybe that's kind of what I want in this case. So that's one way that you can do the macro stuff that I find really useful to do in instrument racks. And again, of course, the layering with different kinds of volumes within the rack itself. Let's go ahead and maybe map a few more things to the overall macro knobs. But before I do that, I do want to further customize the macros a little bit too. Maybe, first of all, by renaming them. So if you click on a macro and you use the Command R or Control R command, let's name this one, let's just call it like cutoff. Or let's call it brightness. Sometimes we get brightness as a term as well. Brightness in live because not enough space. That's okay. Todd, you are most welcome. And Nefertiti, can you do similar instrument racks in Logic? That's a really great question. The closest way that I've done instrument racks in Logic is through using groups, so like summing stacks and being able to do that. Again, Logic isn't necessarily optimized for live performance situations where you might need different kinds of stacks, but main stages, you can do something similar to this in main stage with stacking up different kinds of sounds. You could also, and this is maybe even diving a little bit more into it, but if you ever instantiated the Reason VST version in any kind of DAW, you should be able to use Combinator, which is a really great part of Reason that is my favorite part. It's the reason why I got into Reason. Yay, puns! Or not puns, but like, what's the term for that? I'll look it up and see. But yeah, I love words that have like double meanings to them. So yeah, that's the reason I started using Reason. The Combinator is great. But we have brightness over here. Let's do a couple more. Maybe let's do, let's see if we can do something on the pad part. Maybe we'll also do, what should we do? Let's do gate from the arpeggiator. Let's totally do gate. So let's map that to macro 2. And I'm going to call this, it's already gate because it's mapped there. So let's go ahead and recolor these two. Maybe brightness is a more like yellow kind of feel to it. Maybe gate is more like purplish, pinkish. Let's do a few more. Let's do steps on the arpeggiator. So let's map that to macro 3. And yeah, now we have like a couple of different options. Let's color that blue. So now from push or from the rack itself, you could also do this from the rack. We're controlling this particular instrument rack in several ways. Got the brightness. The arpeggiator. Let's also make the pad arpeggiator a little louder. There we go. And you'll start to get lots of different kinds of layers of sounds. One thing you might notice is that the moment I have mapped any of these controls to a macro on an instrument in an instrument rack, they have this little green dot that pops up next to them, which basically means that their parameter is being controlled by something else that is not directly that knob. And more often than not, it tends to be the instrument rack that it is contained in. So that's just something to be a little bit more mindful of. You won't be able to control anything from this end now. So for example, I'm actually clicking on gate right now, and I'm trying to drag up and down, but it's not working. And that's because gate is now controlled by the macro on the instrument rack. So that's something to be aware of. You're going to have to control things from the instrument rack itself now instead of from within this particular device itself that's in the chain. And we had a shocked face from Jonathan. Ooh, thanks, Abe. Yeah, so this is I guess not also the right show for this. I was just speaking earlier on in today's show, Abe, about how it's good to find the right people to ask the right questions to, because someone asked me about marketing, and probably not the right person for that. But speaking of hardware stuff, there's probably other shows on 343 TV that you can go to for hardware information and also home studio setup information. But the SM7B, this is a really great microphone that I recently obtained in order to do a little bit of recording too. So this is actually a little bit of maybe my own backstory with the mic. I fell in love with this mic when I went to school. There was an SM7B that was available for loan, and I found out that it actually sounds really, or my voice sounds really good with it when I'm singing. So not even just like broadcast types of things, but recording vocals. And partially it's because I have a naturally very bright voice. So whenever I record vocals on, say, like any other kind of microphone that's a condenser that is super good at picking up higher frequencies, like a 414, for example, I end up doing this massive kind of curve with EQs where I'm taking out like all of the 3 and 4K and also taking out a lot of like the 6 and 7K for sibilants, but I don't have to do that with a 7B, an SM7B. So I finally saved up enough to be able to purchase one. So thank you to my bank account for dealing with me for months of kind of making a little accumulatory fund that I could use to fund my lovely SM7B that I'm very pleased about. I just recorded a couple of other vocal things on it to test it out, and true enough, it works exactly as I remember it from school. So I'm very happy about it. Yay, I'm glad you noticed, Abe. That's great. Hi also to a couple of folks who just joined and saw the numbers change as well. Welcome to this stream. We were actually about to wrap up, but let's do a quick recap of some of the things that we did. We talked about instrument racks today and how to build them and make them custom instrument racks. We talked about 2 ways that you could do it. You could start off building from a selected sound and then stacking up different kinds of layers like this we see over here. We started off with a guitar synth, and then we added on a pad that also eventually became an arpeggiator. And then we also created an additional layer with some brass sounds as suggested by the people in the chat. Thank you everyone for participating today. It's been really fun getting your suggestions. And we had this chord progression that we layered on with our drums from last week, where we talked about creating different kinds of custom drum racks. So we had these together. Now, we also spoke about a second way to do it, which is why I've left this track playing up. And that's because another way that you could work with this is by creating a chain of devices first, and then grouping all of these together if you know that you would like to continue working with them. The great part about saving racks also, I just totally let the cat out of the bag. The great part about instrument racks also is that you can save them. So for example, I really like this strumming sound actually, so thank you for that suggestion from earlier in the chat. And I would like to save this to my live library. One thing I might also want to do is maybe rename it. So instead of having this be instrument rack, I'm going to rename it and call it Strum or Glock Strum. And now I can save this to my library by clicking on this little floppy disk icon to save this preset, and it's going to be saved into my user library. So there it is. There is Glock Strum, and I can press enter. And now every time I want to instantiate that device or this instrument, I can just click and drag and drop it onto a MIDI track. So it'll automatically fall onto that track and replace that track in this case. But you know what? I'm gonna also resave this again. Why? When you save any kind of rack, it's going to save in that exact state. So in this case, whenever I pull up this effect rack again, all of these devices are going to be open, but I think I would like to keep them closed, and I don't think I need the macros at the moment to, or maybe let's have the macros up. But I want to resave that, so I'm going to go ahead and delete my preset that I originally saved. Yes, move it to trash. And I'm going to resave it again. So now, let's delete this instrument. We've got no instrument on this track now, so we can't hear anything, even though there is MIDI information coming through. Let's go ahead and drag and drop the Glock Strum custom preset that I have, and now it's back. So I can hear it. I can continue to customize different elements of it if I wanted to. I can even go in here and show the chain list if I wanted to. Right now I just have one layer in here though, like one particular chain, so I don't really need to show it, so I can hide it. And I don't really have any macros either, so I can choose to hide that as well. And so now we're really trying to figure out ways that we can keep things neat and tidy and make sure that our live interface looks clean so that we aren't necessarily distracted by anything. But that's a really great way to, think about working with different kinds of racks. And I'm also going to stop this clip and say thank you to everyone for tuning in today. This was really just a little bit of insight into instrument racks. There's so many other things that you can do with instrument racks, with working with different kinds of layers, different kinds of sounds within a particular rack itself, and just having that on one instrument track. And I do hope that it was useful. This is probably one of my favorite trick related things that I'm doing, and thank you so much, Abe. Really appreciate it. I'm really happy about this too, and I think it says a lot that I'm actually running a space heater underneath my desk, and you can hear a lot of the sound, but I think just because of the way that the 7B is built, it's not picking up too much of that. That my previous mic, which was a Sennheiser, not previous in a sense, I'm still using it, but my other mic that I used for streaming before this was actually picking up more of that, so it was a bit more sensitive as a dynamic handheld kind of thing. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Applause for everyone who was able to join us today. Really appreciate all of you staying tuned. Please watch the next episodes of 343 TV. We stream every day at 1 p.m. Eastern Time because we're currently mostly in New York. But if you want to follow us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can be updated for whenever we have a new stream or whenever we have a new video out. We also do a lot of video content too, in addition to 343 TV stuff. So please subscribe. You can click on the subscribe button on YouTube or follow us on Twitch. Follow us on other platforms too, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We are there. And we are there for you to reach us. We love connecting. So if you would like to tune in for the next stream also, I stream every day on Mondays on this channel, and I also stream on my own YouTube channel too. You can find me as lowercase letters DOLLTR !CK. That's how you spell my artist name. And yeah, I'm super excited to be back again next week. I'll be returning with more on audio effect racks this time, which maybe might interest a few folks who were previously asking me about audio processing and a few of my other streams too. So diving more into that. But also a quick reminder to go ahead and enter the giveaway. We have a giveaway for a $200 Ableton voucher that you can find out if you've won by the end of the week. So it's going to be weekly giveaways for 343 TV. So please enter. Thomas from 343 Labs has put in a link in the chat. So if you scroll up all the way to the YouTube chat, there's information about that. But in the meantime, thank you so much again, everyone, for tuning in. It's been really fun sharing lots of different kinds of tips and tricks with you, especially from season 1 until, season 2 now, I guess, of 343 TV. And I hope to see you again next week. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Bye.
Morning light, break me through the dark. One so bright, show your dying star. Cold as ice, piercing through the heart. Warm as skies, melt the days apart. Wanna hide away, try to run away, tell me if you could save me. Got me falling through ashes, in the dust of the winter blue. Crying no, take me back home, don't leave me alone. Keep me from running to you, still lost in the ashes, in the wake of the burning truth. Morning